going to try as briefly as possible to discuss the climate that we find in Northern California. So keep in mind those key landforms that I've already mentioned because they're going to be important to understanding the differences that we find here in terms of climate, weather, and temperature and precipitation, all that good stuff. And so temperature, how does it vary here? So we do see variations in temperature. And so in the Sacramento Valley, in the summertime, you can actually see the warmest temperatures of anywhere else in the region. Why is this? Well, first off, low-lying. I already mentioned that beforehand, how the Sacramento Valley is low-lying, and as we go up in elevation, temperature goes down. Further, it's farther inland, so it has higher levels of what we call continentality. So it has higher continentality, and so places along a coastline are thus going to be kind of have more moderated temperatures. In fact, in the Sacramento Valley, in the city of Sacramento, temperatures can be 10, 15, 20, 30 degrees higher than you'd find directly to the west along a coastline. For example, San Francisco, which is right there along the western coast, is very, very cool temperatures in the summertime. When you go to visit San Francisco in the summer, bring your jacket, bring a light jacket. Now we go, in other areas we do see the role of altitude. So the Sierra Nevadas, much of the northern area of Northern California, so we have the Klamath Mountains, but also the northern coastal ranges, the inner and the outer ranges along this side of the Sacramento Valley. You can also see, if we're going to zoom in real quick, we can see right there is Mount Shasta, which is once again an example of a conical shaped volcano that is so high in elevation that it actually has an ice cap at the top. Very, very cold temperatures. Now, this is a little bit kind of a simplified model. So one of the things that on all of these areas, what they have in common is they have a wet winter and a dry summer. So wet winter, dry summer. And this is going to be characteristic of the Mediterranean climate. The Mediterranean climate is a distinctive characteristic of it having a pronounced dry period and a pronounced wet period. And this all relates to, once again, going back in time, goes back to the idea of high pressure areas. And so a high pressure area comes up from the south and comes up and moves over this particular area in the summertime. High pressures we associate with dry weather. This high pressure then moves to the south during the winter time, and so what that does then is it brings in now more of low pressure, and so in the winter time they have a pronounced wet season, so a pronounced rainy season. So this is very important when we look at seasons in which we should expect wildfires, seasons in which we should expect landslides. All this relates to certain precipitation and temperature characteristics, but mostly precipitation characteristics related to this dry summer, wet winter pattern. So very much want to emphasize that. Further, what we got going on in terms of other precipitation characteristics, we definitely have the role of mountains and orographic precipitation. So along the western coast, the northern coast ranges, you're going to get a lot of precipitation, especially right there along the coastline. So even though you have that dry summer period, you do get kind of a dry fog period, or kind of this this perpetual fog and mist. That's very important to understanding why we have here the coastal redwoods. Some of the biggest trees in the world are located here right along the coastline. Biggest trees in the world require a good amount of precipitation. So they get it through the good amount of precipitation in the wet period, the wet winter, but even in the summer period, they do kind of get that constant mist from that orographic precipitation as the Pacific Ocean waters are lifted and cooled. You go farther inland, the Sacramento Valley, it's example of a rain shadow. So most of the precipitation is dumped out over here, and it continues on, and it comes down the valley, and it comes down and it's dry. Now, it might sometimes warm back up and then come back up and pick up a little bit of moisture, but more often than not, it's this very dry area. And so the Sierra Nevadas don't often get, especially in the dry summer period, a lot of rainfall. Because of any precipitation that would be coming would essentially, most of it have been spewed out or essentially emptied out here in the North Coastal Range as the weather continues from west to east. So in general, as we go south, it typically gets drier. That's because of the influence of that high pressure throughout more months of the year. Whereas in the north, it typically have a more pronounced wet season. So the winter wet period is longer than you would find to the south.